So a fan requested that with The Boys, the show The Boys, now having finished, that I repost my original review episode from The Boys when it first started airing, which originally aired on The Escapist, with maybe some follow-up thoughts, which is a pretty good idea. So I'm going to do that. Wow. So I fucking nailed it, right? I think it eventually ended about the way it started. I think the finale was fine. The whole thing went on maybe a little too long. I think they kind of said and resaid everything they were ever going to say by the end of season 2, and it was a lot of jogging in place, but the actors were generally good, they were strong characters, and so on. In general, my appraisal of The Boys 7 years ago was that it was a pretty good, especially when you consider it was based on really bad comics, but not great thing that had the potential to be a lot better, and I kind of saw how it could be better, but I also suspected it probably wasn't going to get there, or if it did, it wouldn't maintain it, and looking at how it all shook out, yeah, I was more or less right on that one. Here's the long and short of it. When I was asking, can The Boys be better than this in season 1, what I was more or less asking of it was, can The Boys make The Boys season 2? And they did that. They did the hell out of it. And unfortunately, sometimes there's nowhere to go from success, then down, or just kind of coast until you're done.
This is it. This is the moment.
Alright, so here's the thing of it. The Boys comic profoundly sucks. Among the ocean of terrible comics released between the 90s and early to mid-2000s on the subject of what if superhero but dark by the likes of not Garth Ennis, but especially Garth Ennis, it ranks among the absolute bottom in terms of creative bankruptcy. Just relentless, one note, over and over again. Doesn't this whole genre suck, and aren't the people who write it unironically morons? Here's a cliche from Marvel or DC, but rewritten into an edgy racism and rape joke. Also, we've mentioned capitalism and the Bush administration, so this is actually satire, so you can't say anything about where me, Garth Ennis, might stand about anything. And that was really always the innate problem with the comic. It was never the most graphic or the most disturbing or the most cynical deconstruction of its own genre. It honestly doesn't have many new ideas about dark, flawed, morally compromised, quote-unquote realistic and therefore disappointing or even evil comic book superheroes that hadn't already been done before or better by, fucking hell, take your pick. Squadron Supreme, Watchmen, Top 10, Martial Law, Miracle Man, Youngblood even, and that's mostly because it's ultimately less interested in satirizing or commenting on the genre beyond the surface level fact that Ennis is a comics writer who doesn't like that this is the overwhelming popular genre in the medium he chooses to work, which is valid, and he likes to take the piss whenever he gets the opportunity, but that's all it ever was, a shallow piss take from a creator who's accepted that he makes more money raging at what he hates than writing whatever he's actually passionate about.
Here, have guns. I don't care anymore.
And The Boys, the show, is actually more interesting, although I stress again, not exactly a high bar to clear in the first place, because it actually decided to be a real satire by picking one specific target and actually having, okay, still really only one or two things to say, but still that's one whole actual thing to say beyond nya 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 than the comic itself ever did. The show decided to be about superhero movies, and more specifically Marvel Studios, the MCU, and Disney, which is both obvious since what else were you going to make fun of in 2019? The Snyderverse? That would be like beating up on a blind puppy in a wheelchair at that point. And also target rich, since their point to score repeatedly was all about moralistic posturing. The villain heroes in the show are posing as good guys, but are actually gleefully amoral tools of an evil corporation, and that makes a pretty good funhouse mirror to repeatedly turn on not only the Avengers, but the House of Mickey in general, historically best known for selling not only superheroics, but also, family values as the front face of a globalized mass media and commercial real estate empire. And it helps your own audience ignore the irony of getting their boo hiss we hate mass media capitalism takes from a show produced by Jeff fucking Bezos. But yeah, like I said in the first half, my question coming away from season 1 was there's a lot of stuff that's still kind of creaky about The Boys as an adaptation in terms of actually keeping too much from the comics, like how they tried to still do the right-wing religious and Fox News stuff with Homelander that was there because the comics were written during the Bush administration, and do the corporate progressive virtue signaling as villain B-story stuff at the same time, and that feels kind of forced and awkward. But overall, superhero media of the 2010s being massively corporatized and that being at odds, but also not at odds enough with the purported values of the characters, was a much stronger thematic through line for satire and characterization than Garth Ennis hates everyone else that he works with. So well done. My question was always, can this be better? And for me, better was always going to mean, can it go one level deeper and turn that satirical lens inwards or even sideways onto The Boys itself or its own audience? If you're going to build your whole identity on one joke of popular thing bad, can you do what the best satirists are sometimes not even capable of and investigate why popular thing is popular in spite of the identified negatives and why you yourself might be part of the problem, or at least problematic? You don't even have to come down on either side or change your view, it's just at least good to ask.
You are fun.
Because the thing about satirizing a popular genre, if you're really taking it to task, is important to ask what you're making fun of in the first place and what you're looking for when you're deconstructing. To use maybe not the most relevant one-to-one example, but probably everyone's favorite go-to, Blazing Saddles was never really ultimately satirizing the Western genre. It's making fun of Western cliches, but the satire was aimed at racism, prejudice, and backward social politics of the then-contemporary 1970s, using the setting of a Western parody to do it. Otherwise, Blazing Saddles clearly loved Westerns, and it especially loved dressing its cast up in cowboy costumes and having them do old-school Western cowboy action stuff, both realistically and played for slapstick on vintage Western movie sets. You can see the same energy in most of Mel Brooks' better spoof movies. He loved the Universal monster movies, that's all over Young Frankenstein. He didn't really even care one way or another about Star Wars, but he understood that space battles and laser fights had to be fun for kids or Spaceballs wasn't gonna work. So like Blazing Saddles absolutely interrogates the racism and uncomfortable parts of Hollywood history and frontier mythology, but it acknowledges that the Hollywood frontier was a pretty great place to set a movie. Spaceballs acknowledged that Star Wars had cemented commercialization of modern Hollywood, but it freely admits that Star Wars is fun. So it's also possible for satirists to just straight up look directly inward at cultural inflection points and asks, okay, but did we fuck up here? Like, are we part of the problem?
Hans, are we the baddies?
So like for a current example, when the Trump administration, both times, and right-wing pundits of a certain age started to point to politically incorrect bad boy comedy of the 90s and 2000s as this supposed bedrock of the now so-called anti-wokeness backlash that was informing actual policy decisions to either roll back rights or otherwise attack marginalized communities in the 2010s, you saw veteran un-PC comedy vents like the writers at Family Guy of all entities get right out in front and grapple with their version of this in the first Trump administration.
You're not just a guy from Rhode Island, you're Peter Griffin from Family Guy. Many children have learned their favorite Jewish, black, and gay jokes by watching your show over the years.
In fairness, we've been trying to phase out the gay stuff. But you know what? We're a cartoon. You can turn us off. You're the president. We can't turn you off.
And now in the second, we saw the South Park guys finally take some stock of their own, kind of, with the ongoing B-story about Cartman having to face what his identity even is when the world's actual power structure now just sounds and acts like a worse version of his typical bullshit.
You guys are not gonna believe this. The President of the United States canceled NPR.
What's NPR?
What's NPR? The funniest show ever where all the lesbians and Jews complain about stuff? The f***ing president had it taken off the air. I'm not special anymore, so what's the point in me even existing?
Because it's South Park and the actual most important thing there is always going to be whether Matt and Trey themselves have felt personally inconvenienced or slighted in some way. Anyway, The Boys' answer to this in Season 2 turned out to be Stormfront. Reimagined from a one-joke haha Shazam Captain Marvel but a Nazi from the comics into basically a slow burn gotcha fuck you prank on The Boys series' own audience.
Do not waste your hard-earned cash on this shitty big-titted hunk of plastic.
I mean, I get that a lifetime of jerking off to Transformers didn't exactly make you popular with the ladies, but a little effort would be nice.
You don't know me. I'm not a sellout.
Oh, okay, cool. Congratulations.
Stormfront shows up for season 2 as something like a Swiss Army cool girl, built in a lab to be your new favorite character if you loved this show but maybe didn't fully clock which side the writers actually wanted you to root for. She's a pretty action girl who doesn't take any bullshit. She's one of the 7, but instead of being themed like a serial numbers filed off Marvel character like they are, she's got big Zack Snyder energy. In fact, personality-wise, she's more like one of the boys, just fighting on the other side. And guys, she totally thinks that both corny-ass, old-timey, rah-rah Americana superheroics like Homelander and kind of Starlight do, and performative progressive wokeness like the Corporation is into are super corny and dumb.
Do girls make better heroes?
Look, no offense, I get you have your talking points, but why does it matter whether heroes have a dick or a vag? I mean, shouldn't we all just, be competent at our jobs? I don't think girls do anything better. I think chicks and dicks are in it together.
She sees through all that. She's above labels. She just calls it like she sees it for a now edgy social media buzz. She ain't left or right. She's the secret third thing. She's...
Fucking yellow bastard.
She's a fucking Nazi.
We are in a war for the culture. The other races are grinding us down and taking what is rightfully ours, but we can fight back. And you will be the man who will lead us.
Because that's what always happens. Because the secret third thing that someone supposedly is when someone tells you their morality is supposedly so complicated that they can't make seemingly simple moral distinctions against obvious evil always turns out to be supporting the obvious evil, just with an extra layer of convoluted, smug self-justification.
There's 3 ways to do things. The right way, the wrong way, and the max power way.
Isn't that the wrong way?
Yeah, but faster.
No! I just want to be unequivocal about this, by the way. Even though I knew exactly where it was going the entire time, because I both recognized the name from the comics, and in both cases the name itself is a pun reference to an actual Nazi newsletter, the Stormfront story is the most brilliant gag the boys ever did. Because after spending all of season 1 basically giving a hand job to some of the most easily satisfied audience in contrarian naughty boy nerd culture by spamming the LOL, fuck Disney, the MCU, and other mainstream things, am I right fellas, button over and over and over and calling it satire when realistically like maybe a fourth of it was generally satirical and the rest was just amusingly juvenile parody, the series diabolically turned its own guns on that audience and effectively said, hey you, specific, loud, obnoxious part of our fan base that clearly didn't get or maybe just didn't care that the point of this show is that Homelander and company are all the way bad and no, mainstream superhero media shouldn't emulate this and well, okay, yeah, this is kind of exactly why trying to satirize Bush-era corporate patriotism and Obama-era corporate progressivism at the same time with the same characters was a confused endeavor from the start, so maybe that's on us.
I kind of feel like you gotta pick a direction.
We're doing both! But regardless, here's a self-insert POV character for y'all. Yeah, you like her, right? Sure you do. She's a cool girl, not like the other girls. She says what you're thinking. Well, you know what her big character twist is? Yeah. That's you. That's what all of you come off like. Nazi simps who wanna fuck Homelander.
Message!
Oh, and remember how we were making fun of that feminist empowerment team-up scene from the Avengers movie and how cheesy and woke it was and how you laughed at it and felt like you were in on the joke with us?
Girls get it done.
Well, now we're gonna do a version of it for real, on purpose, and it's gonna work. Perfect. No notes. Peak genre satire, peak twist, best villain they ever had on the series, best use of Homelander as an actually threatening but also still kind of pathetic guy, best reinterpretation of stale recurring Silver and Bronze Age superhero cliches, best pivot to actual superhero stuff to finish it out, just the best that the boys ever got at making all of its own jokes work. Everything it's done since, even the stuff that's been good, has really just been not as good versions of everything it did this season. They never exceeded this, and at the time, I knew they wouldn't. Like, I got to this and I just knew, wow, that was good, but this is it, huh? it probably is where they peak. They'll keep going because they haven't even done a version of the ending from the comics yet, but this is as good as they're ever gonna get. This is Gohan versus Perfect Cell. You can absolutely keep going after this, maybe even do interesting, entertaining stuff, but this is where people will say you should have stopped and it wouldn't have fallen off. Because here's the thing, there's really only two proper, honest endings for superhero deconstruction as a subgenre if you're gonna carry it all the way to the logical extreme. You can either do the Watchmen thing, where you go, yeah, in a realistic world, this whole concept eventually falls in on itself and will just need to go away for everyone's own good or destroy itself. Or you can do the opposite route, you know, what's so funny about Truth, Justice, and the American Way, where the answer to deconstruction is,
how does it feel to be deconstructed? To be the victim? To watch your dreams die?
Yeah, you just say, no, go fuck your deconstruction, this is comic book world and we do superheroes here, and actually heroes can be good and inspiring, and we not only want that to happen, but one of the prime heroic acts can be thwarting the people who try to force things to be otherwise. And The Boys Season 2, after 2 whole seasons of saying over and over and over to riotous seals slapping their fins together applause from its audience, ha ha ha, man, isn't that corny ass, emotionally manipulative, walking symbols of righteousness to perform heroic acts of choreographed heroism stuff from the Marvel movies so dumb, gets to the end of its story and opts for the second one. Okay, we're done deconstructing now, time for some actual heroics.
Girls do get it done.
Because that works. Because in spite of itself, the audience is kind of still rooting for some real superhero stuff, even as they're laughing at the parody. Like I mentioned Spaceballs earlier, and yeah, you could do a comedy version of Star Wars where you deliberately leave out the space battles and the lightsabers and the Death Star explosion, but why would you? People love that stuff. And also because I suspect when you get right down to it, nobody making The Boys was ever going to hate superheroes as much as Garth Ennis does. The real issue is this is the kind of build-up payoff you can really only make work well this one time, and it turns out it's the only big showpiece trick The Boys actually had in the tank. Be relentlessly tasteless and gross and deconstructive in a shouldn't we all just outgrow this bullshit way about the superhero genre for a certain amount of episodes, and then just drop a bomb of unironic, but how can you not be romantic about baseball, MCU sentimentality on the audience? And repeat, and repeat, and repeat, and repeat. Ultimately, this was never some grand statement against or deconstruction of the superhero genre or even the media around it. The Boys just kind of was another superhero show, just a dark and irreverent one with a scattering of topical political humor. If it did have an opinion to give about the genre, it never cut much deeper than, it would be more fun with more cursing, blood, and nudity. So where Ennis Original Comics are shouting with a bullhorn to burn down the Marvel and DC universe, the series version could be viewed more like a crude suggestion that Marvel and DC, I don't know, should produce more stuff like Peacemaker and Punisher, which they did. So yeah, that's kind of funny, right? It also just neatly summarizes The Boys in its own whole era of the rest of the genre in the 2020s in some respect. It's almost absurdly perfect that this supposed MCU parody show launched the same year that Avengers Endgame did, and then did its full 5 seasons not during the height of Marvel Mania, but within the duration of what's going to be remembered, fairly or not, as Marvel Studios' Time in the Wilderness, the Multiverse Saga, and ended within mere months of Marvel's big brand new day comeback, right? Like, that's kind of funny. It's like Homelander died and he took quote-unquote superhero fatigue with him. And maybe that's where The Boys belongs, culturally and historically speaking, filed alongside the post-Snyderverse, pre-James Gunn DCEU oddities and Marvel's decade of jogging in place, throwing ideas at the wall to see what sticks while they get ready for the X-Men, as part of the whole genre's near-decade, partially COVID-fragmented detour that now feels poised to be pulling back toward the main road of mainstream cultural domination.
Superheroes are done.
Or, you know, not. The entire entertainment industry, popular culture, and all of our political system could burn down again. Kinda hope not. This last decade has kind of sucked, honestly, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.